Pay me, pay me, pay me my silver now. Pay me or go to jail. Pay me my silver now.
RoadToRuta.com. Silver got a little pump today. It's like up one day, down the next. Up one day, down the next. Clearly, JP Morgan's back in the game. Do not underestimate the power of JP Morgan when it comes to silver market manipulation through derivatives. They own the vast majority of the derivatives in silver. I'm sure they're saying, oh, well, we do have the silver in our warehouse. Well, they're the custodian of close to 500 million ounces of silver for the beneficial trust of SLV. Now, if they're using that metal to rehypothecate it, for example, lend, lease, all that stuff, all the bullshit, or if any of that metal is not there, all this is completely illegal. Not that JP Morgan cares about the law. 5 times felony participant and recipient. They have pleaded guilty to 5 felony accounts. Shocking that even one felony account gets pleaded guilty by a bank, given that they have a banking license, the license to print money for free. But hey, that's the world we live in. I want to talk about JP Morgan specifically and why we need to understand they are the number one rigger, and they have been. Now, the 3 years that they were on a sabbatical because they had a deferred prosecution agreement, they didn't stop trading. They just traded under another name. And it was a deal structured with Bank of America. And I'll show you. It's all in the data. It's right there. It's not like the CFTC can't see this for themselves. Or actually, the number one regulator of the COMEX is the CME, the owner of the COMEX. Yeah, as if the fox would guard the hen house type of thing. Money is stolen in the COMEX just like it's stolen everywhere else on every exchange on the planet. So do not expect them to do it. Number 2 regulator is the CFTC. We know them to be just incompetent and criminal, by the way. 2 of the biggest silver derivative holders have employees as commissioners, JP Morgan and Citibank. So just do with that what you will. But what's really going on right now, really interesting. I was watching a discussion on Jean-Claude's channel, The Wacky Woo, with Snippy and Clipped, and they were talking about that the Chinese yuan, which is currently fixed at 7-to-1, around 7-to-1 to the U.S. dollar. So every dollar we print, China prints 7 yuan. They seem to think those would come together. I don't think they will come together. It doesn't advantage China to allow the U.S. to print and us not print. But that's the deal. And here we have, because China's starting to see a hiccup, China weighs a new stabilization fund to prop up the stock market. Preliminary plans have been submitted to top leadership. Authorities consider fresh measures as the slide worsens. China is considering forming a state-backed stabilization fund to shore up confidence in the $9.5 trillion stock market, according to people familiar with the matter. So the United States of America did this in 1933 with the Gold Act. We created the Exchange Stabilization Fund to rig markets to stabilize. I can't rig. It's market rigging. And it has been alive and well for a very long time. What is that? 90 years that the U.S. has been rigging all markets. That's why you see stocks go constantly up. Gold and silver are controlled. But now China's doing it. Except they're telling people. They like to tell people when they do things. Our government doesn't. Well, we gave them a blanket authorization in I think it's 33 or 34. There was the Gold Confiscation Act, and then there's the Gold Act. I think it was 34, which created the Exchange Stabilization Fund. And it says you have the power to rig any market you want. Go for it. So we did, and we still do. So China is going to print. They don't want to be the world's reserve currency. Not at all. They don't want everybody moving into their currency. They want to pump as much as they can into their people's pockets. Now, they're not going to bail out any foreign investors. Foreign investors, I remember, and you guys have heard me say this before, I went to a meeting with small group, maybe 50 elite bankers in San Francisco. And the speaker was very small room. The speaker was Janet Yellen. And she was telling everybody, all right, here's what's happening. And you have to put all your money into China. China, we're going to help China get on their feet. And we're going to move all our manufacturing over to China. And I was like, there's no country in the world that has ever succeeded by outsourcing their manufacturing. That's like the number one thing you got to control. And she's like, no, it would never happen that way. We're so much bigger. Well, we're not anymore, and voila, it happened. And who's at the Treasury? Janet Yellen, the same freaking. She wasn't very smart, I'll tell you that. I think she's a little book smart, but as far as she does what she's told. Right now, Wally Ademo is telling her what to do, the number 2 person at the Treasury, and he gets told by the Rothschilds and the banking cabal and all that. So, yeah, China is not going to go 1-to-1 with the U.S., the currency. They wouldn't want it. And they have the power of the printing press, too. So they said they're going to pump in at least, I think it was 1.2 trillion, something massive. I can't find where it is. But yeah, of course they're going to pump up their market, just like every government in the world pumps up their market. Everything is fake that you see. Wall Street is fake. We pump it up all the time. Look at the repo market for the banks. Look at, the Exchange Stabilization Fund is a real thing. Yes, they have money to rig markets, but they don't need money anymore because it's all derivatives. Exchanges are all derivative trades. So, and there's unlimited derivatives that they can write. All right, you guys have heard this before. A couple things before I get into what's going on with silver. Yes, a huge jump. It almost hit $1. Dollar days. They could be coming. I do want to point out, where is it? Right here, that we're still under those moving averages. So the 100, 250-day moving averages, they're right around 23.50. So we definitely have a good buck to go up. But if it goes above that, we're going to see a run most likely. Who knows? The big brother's back in town, J.P. Morgan. And so not quite sure that you can count on what has been done the whole time. It is Friday the 13th, so anything can happen today. The world is falling apart, in case you hadn't noticed. And people love to say you don't buy gold and silver to make money. You buy gold and silver to save your ass. Yeah, I think you could do both. I mean, we started at Rotorua, started buying silver at $5. We saw J.P. Morgan drive the price up to 50 and then drive it back down. We've chronicled all the manipulation over the last 23 years that I've been doing this. And it just becomes more obvious and obvious and obvious. We are making a difference. The whole world knows about it. I think in 2019, when Trump put the hammer down J.P. Morgan for doing just that, rigging the silver market, it wouldn't have happened unless all the people out there were screaming about it. Ted Butler especially. Big kudos to Ted. The boys at GATA on gold and silver as well. There's been a lot of us running around saying, hey, everybody look over here. So we'll see what happens. I think we're nearing the end. We're not there yet. Again, we do have a deadline, and that's November 5th, I think, is the election day of next year, supposedly. I don't think we're going to get there. I don't think there will be another election for president in the United States of America, at least in this form of government. I think every bank on the planet is in deep shit. As a matter of fact, the Fed's vice chair just came out and said another financial crisis could cost the U.S. $5 trillion to $25 trillion. Remember me screaming back in it was March of 2009. 2009, I think it was Tim Geithner came out and said we're gonna rig the markets, or the stock, all markets are going to go up as of today, and they did. And I was screaming about it. I said the next banking crash isn't going to be $700 billion, that they leveraged up to $20 trillion. It's going to be $20 trillion that needs to be leveraged up to what? $200 trillion? That won't do it. 2.5 quadrillion is a derivative market. That would do it. So what, are you going to double the monetary? I mean, how what is that? Take 2.5 quadrillion divided by the amount of money they're printing right now. That's what would be needed. And of course, it would never be agreed to. Interesting that the Speaker of the House, Scalise, has now backed out. That's right on the line of Road to Ruta. I don't think the House is going to ever, the government is ever going to approve anything else through normal means, at least. I know Biden wants to get us to war the best he can. He's telling people that babies are getting their heads cut off when he says, I saw it. And now the White House is saying, no, we didn't see anything. That's not what he was talking about. He was talking about third-party report. Oh, it's just so insane. There's weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Don't fall for the bullshit. Nothing the media says is real and true. Don't even pick a side. Who knows what's going on either side? It's all a game to sucker you in to be destroyed. Don't do it. Everybody knows within the regulators, at least. I mean, remember the FDIC meeting? It said we're going to have like all banks are going to be shut down, and only the FDIC insurance levels at $250,000 will be paid out. Now, what does that do to a corporation like Apple Corporation that has billions and billions and billions of dollars in the banking system? Sorry, a corporation only has $250,000 worth of FDIC insurance as well. So there's a lot of things that need to be worked out, but they're not going to get worked out until after the crash. So everybody's waiting on the crash, so hang on to your shit. Keep it in your own possession. On the sidelines, if you don't have metal yet, contact Andy Scheckman. He's always busy, but hey, he can take care of you. Info at milesfranklin.com. Tell them to send you their current inventory list. Only buy what they have in inventory. And they'll give you prices. Just send them an email. Info at milesfranklin.com. milesfranklin.com. Because you're going to want as much physical silver in your possession as you can possibly stomach. Gold. I love gold because of the concept of gold. I hate gold because they're not telling you how much gold there is out there. There's at least 2 million tons of gold out there, at least. And what do they say? 200,000 tons is all that's ever been mined. 2 Olympic-sized swimming pools is bullshit. Why do they say that? Because they have all the gold. They have no silver. So, yeah, definitely, if you love gold, swap all your gold for silver today at 85 to 1. And then after free markets come back and we find out, gold goes up 5x from where it is, but silver goes up 50x, then swap them back and you get it, 10 times the amount of gold that you had right now. If you love gold, wouldn't you love 10 times the amount when we have free markets? So swap your gold for silver. Andy can do that, by the way. If you have some gold coins and bars or whatever, they do swaps for silver. So go check that out. But now's the time, definitely. Okay, here's what I wanted to talk about, because I always scream, oh, there's JP Morgan doing this, JP Morgan's doing that. I mean, look at today. I really like the look of today's chart. That's not the way JP Morgan operates. JP Morgan does the big dumps like yesterday. Like dumps like bang, 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 all at one time. Look at that huge dump. This is what I'd like to call slow and steady wins the race. This is the sign of the good guys. This is a power move up. Nobody's spiking anything, and then it spiked a little, and then it just keeps power moving up. I think this is a sign that the good guys are moving in, which is great. We'll see. Ultimately, we need to destroy the old system to get to anything new. So that's basically what's going on. So I want to talk about why I think it's JP Morgan, why we know it's JP Morgan, and not only... So back in, let's see here, where should we start this? In September of 2019, JP Morgan was removing itself from the repo market in order to weaken the economy so that Trump would get destroyed in the election. It's election tampering at its finest. And that they pulled billions out of the repo market. And then we had that spike, 10% spike in the repo. Then the hammer came down on JP Morgan. They got charged with RICO charges for manipulating the gold and silver market and the U.S. Treasury. But the big thing was silver. Gold's, I mean, clearly gold's manipulated, but it's not manipulated like silver. I mean, gold's trading at 2.5 times its all-time high from 1980. Silver's trading at what, 40? At the time, it was like 40% of its all-time high. Clearly, there's a big difference between the manipulation of gold and the manipulation of silver, and you know what's more important to the banking system. It's the silver, not the gold. They own the gold. They can have gold go to, they'll be better off if gold goes up. With silver, it's a different deal. And 60% of silver is gone. After you mine it, it's gone into the industrial side of silver. It's just gone. Anyway, so it was September 2019. That's when JP Morgan really had to change what they do. They're figuring out, JP Morgan and the banking cabal, working with the government, with the Treasury, saying, okay, how are we going to keep rigging the markets, but at the same time pull the plug on JP Morgan, at least for a couple years? How are we going to do that? All right, let's get them to agree 1 year later to a $920 million payout. But in that time from 2019 on, they had to figure out what we're going to do. We can settle, but how are we going to continue to rig the market? And what they figured out is, hey, JP Morgan, during the time they were rigging the price lower, they took into their accounts 1.2 billion or more ounces of physical silver. Ted Butler's proved this. I've been screaming about that stuff for a long time too. You can just see it. Look at the volumes. And JP Morgan used to see their name every single week pulling silver out, or every single day of the COMEX. Now, none of the deliveries happen on the COMEX. It's all LBMA and China. But, okay, so that was the idea. In 2019, by 2020, they had figured something out. What did they figure out? Well, let's go look. First of all, here's where we are today with the OCC derivative market for precious metals. Now, the criminals over at the OCC, headed by a large bank supervision, is a guy from JP Morgan, of course, changed the way they report, and they lumped in gold, so we can't tell how much silver is in there. But we do have the prior reports. So let's go back to 2019, the first quarter of 2020. Look where JP Morgan had $29 billion worth of silver derivatives, mostly silver. There's some palladium, platinum, not much at all. But that's $29 billion worth, which at the price of silver at the time was $22. That's where Ted got all his information on. Hey, not only has he seen the warehouse receipts and the transfers, JP Morgan hedges every ounce of silver they hold. So you got $29 billion. That's $1.3 billion worth of silver derivatives to hedge their massive amount of silver they got in. But here's the real interesting thing. This is when they're just trying to figure out, what are we going to do? Bank of America had nothing. They had no silver derivatives. They weren't even in the game in the first quarter of 2020. The next quarter, all of a sudden, wow, they jumped to $2.7 billion, which is what, maybe 3 million ounces, or 300 million ounces of silver derivatives. That's like, wait, no. 3 times 5. Anyway, they started, hold on, I can do it in my head. 1.5 million ounces, 150 million ounces of silver derivatives right here. And that's in one quarter. It's like, oh my God, what? I remember seeing, maybe it's just an anomaly. Citibank was always at around 6 or 7 billion. I think that's mostly the SLV ETF, long and short stuff they were doing with JP Morgan on the derivative side for SLV, which is completely illegal. But that was like, oh my God, what's happening here? And then it was the third quarter that JP Morgan signed the deferred prosecution agreement. And then you see it jump to 3.3, which is, 200 million? I'm getting my numbers all wrong there. You could do the math. Times 5,000 or divided by, all right, fine, I'll do it on my calculator. We got 3.3 million in silver derivatives. Billion dollars, not million. That's $1 billion. divided by the price. What was it, 22 at the time, maybe something like that. That's 150 million, right? So they're just, oh my God, what's happening to Bank of America? And right then, Warren Buffett was switching all his banking investments. He had, Wells Fargo and Goldman Sachs and Bank of America. He had a little Bank of America. And all of a sudden, everything went into Bank of America. Pretty much all his investments in the banking side went into Bank of America. Why? Well, maybe he was doing a deal. I don't know. So from that point on, it just went crazy. Ultimately landing at the last. Now, this is the last report before they put gold into this. Now we can't tell what's going on. But in the fourth quarter of 2021, so it had been about 2 years, year and a half since B of A was just beginning to get into the silver derivative market. They had ballooned to almost higher than J.P. Morgan at $27 billion worth of silver derivatives, which is 1.2 billion ounces of silver. And that's where Ted came up with his understanding that because J.P. Morgan was not allowed to deal in the silver market during their deferred prosecution agreement, which was 3 years from September 2020, which put us right to last month, September 23, they got out of that agreement. So everything's hidden now. But at this point in time, we saw it. It's right there. They had leased 1.2 billion ounces of silver from JP Morgan Chase. At least. And then what happened? I think these were short-term leases. Now that JP Morgan's back in the game, and by the way, the numbers, I'll show you the numbers right now. They are, this is it. So by lumping in gold to these numbers, you can't tell how much is silver and how much is gold. But you can tell that Bank of America has 81 billion. I think they're trying to hide is, I don't think Bank of America's numbers were going up. I think they were going to start to go down, which would be obviously a payoff of the leases or a closing out of the leases. I don't think this silver went back to JP Morgan. I might be wrong, but I don't think it did. I still think they probably have a lot. But of that original, now that they're back, maybe this is now the time that all the silver flows back into JP Morgan's vault that was used by Bank of America to suppress the price. But it was all clearly from all the reports, that was the plan. That was the scheme. As a matter of fact, back then, Jenny Moonstone said they have another plan coming for silver manipulation. I can't. There's more people involved now. And then we get all this stuff. I'm like, damn, she's good. Anyway, so that's silver manipulation in a nutshell. 100% criminal, of course. J.P. Morgan now has free reign. So, but on the good guy side, because we're talking about little tiny amounts of money, something so important to the bankers as controlling the silver price, and with the amount of money that the total silver market is, it's like sneezing type of money. I mean, 1.2 billion ounces is, you times that by the $28 or $22 price, you're not looking at a lot of money. And, Buffett could buy every ounce of silver left in the world if he wanted. And he doesn't have to worry about the price going up because they rigged the price down. I think that's what he did through the JP Morgan. Remember, Buffett, when he bought that silver, 110, 120 million ounces back in 1999, somebody found out about it, and he had to tell his shareholders, we bought some silver because of the supply-demand deficit. It just seemed obvious to us. And then in 2000, I think it's 2006, 2005, something like that, when they made the silver SLV ETF, Buffett sold all his silver. He didn't sell it. He got it taken from him by the cabal. They were going to throw him in jail for one of the companies bought called General Re. It was a big scandal. It was a Buffett company, and they're like, oh, let's throw him in jail. And the bankers went after him. And we all know what happens to you when the bankers go after you. So Buffett said, okay, I tell you what. You throw away these charges on General Re, and I'll give you all my silver. He didn't care about the money. I don't know if they paid him or not. Well, they had to if it went into an ETF, all that, the funding of the ETF. But the key was they took his assets because they were going to throw him in jail. Look up General Rhee and Warren Buffett, and you'll see that all of a sudden all charges mysteriously dropped, and a couple months later they start the silver ETF. That's the kind of shit you got to get down under the hood and dive in. That's what we do at Road to Ruta, by the way. Okay. Not getting together with Jenny today. I will be posting a private road discussion this weekend. Lots of great stuff here on the private road. Go check it out. There's just so much. I've been doing this for so long, and there's so much evidence to the silver manipulation, the gold manipulation, oil, U.S. dollar manipulation, people manipulation. Every war, by the way, has been spawned from a banker crisis. So we're in a banker crisis today. I do expect war to break out on a bigger scale, much bigger scale. They're a cornered rat, and cornered rats do whatever the hell they want. So keep an eye on that. That's what I got for you today. You want to join the private Road to Ruta? Go click on roadtoruta.com, subscribe today, and we're currently giving away one Veritasium token. This isn't for the crash time frame. This is for after the crash. If the United States wants to set up markets again like we had before, except remove the criminals, Reggie Middleton invented a software to do that. And that's what this is. It's a software to transact peer-to-peer transactions. He was working with the Jamaican Stock Exchange and the German Stock Exchange to implement, and then the U.S. government came in and the banks came in and shut him down. But they did grant him a patent. He has 3 patents now. So I do think that at ultimately some point after the crash, we'll all be using Veritasium if you want to participate in any exchange. Peer-to-peer transactions. You buy stock from the person who actually had the stock. No more need for your broker-dealer guys. No more need for high-frequency trading or JP Morgan. What a beautiful world that would be. Anyway, this is Bix Weir. I'll talk to you guys later.